Hello and welcome to the KOFISI Connect podcast, your source for a wealth of roundtable discussions on the workplace and business, as well as cultural news and trends from the diverse and dynamic continent of Africa. I'm your host, Richard Okenye, and today I'm very pleased to introduce Julian Macharia, Managing Partner at Well-Made Strategy. Ahead of our Communication Skills Masterclass on 6th February 2025 with Well-Made Strategy, we're excited to have a discussion on mastering the art of communication. Mastering the art of communication is crucial for businesses and professionals because it fosters understanding, builds relationships, and drives success for teams, clients, and shareholders. Thank you very much, Julian, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Can you tell us a bit about yourself and Well-Made Strategy?
Yeah, thanks. So our organization is called Well-Made Strategy. We're about 15 years old. We're a Pan-African organization. And what we do is we support organizations to strengthen their communications and basically leverage the power of good communications to help them achieve their goals. We have an affinity for social enterprise, social justice organizations, NGOs, and so on. And so we've kind of optimized our interventions and our work to serve that community. And the reason being, we feel that communications works hardest around social justice issues because you're trying to get people to adopt new behaviors, new thinking, new narratives, which is a lot of work. Whereas with a product, if it's very good, people will buy anyway. But we are selling ideas, we are selling belief systems, we are changing narratives, we are changing culture. So I think we feel in this space is where you really see communications doing a lot of work. When you're doing advocacy, trying to change policies, you're talking to the minds and hearts of people.
Right.
Yeah.
When you're speaking to people about people.
I love that, yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
So you've worked with a lot of organizations from what I hear.
Yeah.
And I have seen that as well.
Yeah.
From your experience working with these different organizations, what are some of the most common pitfalls when it comes to communications that these businesses and organizations face?
Yeah, I think the biggest one I would say is communications is seen as something you pick up and drop, like an event or a task. And I always say communications has to be seen like how you do your accounting or finance. There's no one who says, yeah, we'll do accounts, maybe in August when we have time. People do it on a daily basis. A lot of organizations do a lot of tracking, measuring performance. They do a lot of everything else save for communications. So I would say the biggest thing first is that communications is seen as an add-on or a nice to have rather than a core function. And you'll see this even in some organization structures. You'll have your classic maybe CEO, COO, GM, CTO, then somewhere, sometimes under HR and admin, maybe there'll be communications, Yeah. And for me, I believe communications should report directly to the CEO. It's such a big business function, especially in today's world. So I think that I would say is the first thing. People are not investing or recognizing how important communications is in terms of their operations. And a lot of issues you have, people are saying your customer care is not working. People are saying they're not connecting with your product. People are saying they don't understand what we do. They are misinformed about who we are. All those are signs of not a very strong communication system. Then there's internal communications. Your colleagues don't even know what's happening. So one department is doing something, another one is struggling. Or you talk to maybe someone in accounts. Do you know why we post these numbers every day? They say, I don't know. I know those IT guys do it yet. That's actually your bread and butter.
It's not in my domain.
It's not in my KPI. But even internal comms has a role to it.
Okay.
Then, unfortunately, when something goes sideways, you're fumbling over how to manage the situation. That's still part of comms. So comms is, to me, is as critical as accounting and finance. So I think that when organizations are seeing it that way, I think the investment will come. Then you'll begin to see the power of it. And the best organizations, the biggest brands in the world, their communication departments are insane. Some even bigger than those finance. Because finance and accounting nowadays, you have amazing tools, platforms to collect the data, do report summaries, but comms still needs a lot of human touch to make it work.
Okay. Making it a priority which means discussing it at the same time when you're also including other aspects of the business. But now when it comes to communication, again, as you said, internally, there's need for everyone to be aligned with what's happening, what's being communicated, and also to the outside clients, shareholders, and a general audience to your business.
Yeah.
Which means there's need for unity in what we are communicating. Someone from accounts needs to speak the same language with someone else from finance, from communication, from this governance team with the CEO. In what ways then can businesses establish this unified communication approach to ensure that there's that clarity, whatever kind of communication is being put out?
Yeah, so I think that's a very good question. And before we even unify communications, the first thing is the organization or business must have its strategy. So communications for me is an enabler. It's an enabler and also an amplifier. So if something is bad, communications will just make it more people know it's bad. Communication doesn't fix the business problem. So if you have a product or a service you're offering, if there's a problem with the service, and I like to use this analogy, if you sell bottled water, but where you source the water is always salty. It doesn't matter how many campaigns you do, how beautiful the design is, how beautiful the logo is. The primary role of bottled water is to first quench my thirst. Yeah. Then everything else comes after. So if the water is not good, it doesn't matter what communications you do. Allow me to be a bit political. I think we heard the other day that the Kenya government hired a PR company to change the image of Kenya.
Yeah.
And everyone is saying the problem is not the image. It's not, if internally everything was working well, but we are not being represented, then a company can come and rebrand.
Yeah.
But the problem is the issues are real.
Right.
So you have to fix the issues. Then now you do your comms, your rebrand, or your packaging story. So first thing is you need to have a clear business strategy. What do you want to achieve? Then communications will help you get there. So communications in of itself cannot work in isolation. So you find a lot of communications teams are told, go make a communication strategy, bring it back to us. But the business guys are off on a retreat, the main folks. So that's why they never speak to each other.
Right.
But if you had integrated them, then you'll say as an organization, we want to recruit, we want to get another 10,000 customers. So the comms team will know, so our communications plan this year is about recruiting new customers. Some businesses is not about recruiting. Maybe they're saying, look, we have a very good product, we are well distributed, but people don't seem to know about our offering. So we want to grow maybe awareness or share of mind of people to know that our product is better than Y. Our product can allow you to do 1, 2, 3. Then communications will build. So comms doesn't work just out of the blue and just say, hey, check us out. We are nice. Motivation Monday. It shouldn't be random. Even as they communicate, there should be a plan towards the business. And when that happens, when you're now doing your reporting, when the business is being evaluated, communications can speak to their contribution to the bottom line, to the business. But that's why communications is a secondary plan. People say, hey, we had a golf tournament, we didn't see photos. But see, that's all they've been reduced to, photographers,
and the social
doing a caption. But the question to the comms team should be, hey, our sales are dropping. What do we need to do? How do we need to communicate? Then after that is when you'll talk about campaigns, posters, flyers, road shows. But all those are just activities. The big thing is, why are we doing it? And that's a big question. So the business has to be clear on what they want to achieve in the short to medium term. Then now communications uses the art and science of it to help support that.
Right. So this means that everyone in the organization, every team should be in tune with what the business strategy looks like.
Absolutely. It has to be clear what you're trying to do. Yeah. And I like to think of communications like the army. The general will come in and say, this is a situation, we need to go and secure this base, we need to go and claim this weapon or intelligence, that's it. Then even the communications team, you're able to make a roadmap and say, what are our risks? What will you expect? Who are we going to deal with? Then once you get there, then it's very clear, the communication. And that's why they're constantly saying, we've now arrived here, give us the next instructions. We've now arrived. So that's where comms is actually working. But when you look at it from a business point of view, once you have a clear objective, so let me give an example of if we said that people do not know about our product, or our product is, we feel it's strong, but for some reason people are not buying it. The next natural thing is, who is this customer we're interested in? And that customer, from a comms point, we refer to them as an audience, because that's a person we need to convince, we need to persuade to switch from whatever product they're using to ours. If you've invented something new that has never existed, it's slightly different because now you're doing an education. Now you have to tell people now there's a new product,
Right.
Like how we're told now there's a new thing called a mobile phone. Now you'll be able to call, but you see, even then we still had phones. So we were just saying it's the same thing, but now wireless. But if you're inventing something that never existed before, you first have to slowly start explaining what it is, what it's about, how it works. Then after that, you give them reasons to do. If you're in an industry where you're a new entrant in that, the product you're offering has been there. So maybe you make herbal teas. Herbal teas have been there from the beginning. Now you want to say what's different about your herbal tea. Is it the flavors? Is it the benefits? Is it the price? Now you have to find your unique selling point. But if that doesn't exist, communications cannot invent it. The business also has to say, but actually what's unique about us? Then we say, who are we targeting? We are targeting young people who work in offices, people who value their health, who value that. So you start getting an image of this person and what they value. So that's sort of your audience. Then is when you go to the messaging point of view. If you're selling a luxury product, price is normally not mentioned. You've seen those things where people say DM for price or price on application. The assumption is for you, money is not an issue. For you, you're looking for a higher order thing. But when you look at a product like maybe like a fizzy drink, like a soda, you'll find them even saying was 25 shillings, now 23, because they know there are so many options. You can drink water, milk, soup. There's like 100 options to quench your thirst. So now they know for the person to take up this product, price will be the differentiator. And remember, if you're selling something at that 20 shilling range, that's someone who is interested in that. But if you're selling whiskey, I never see, Johnny Walker was for, it's not an issue because they know, in fact, the higher you go, the more because you're selling status. So once you're clear on your audience, you understand what they value, why they're using your product, then you now develop the right messaging. So that's why you'll find there are products that can be good, but the messaging may not be clear. If you'll allow me to give you one other maybe business example, there's a very famous I don't know if I should use that word. Actually, let me call it what it is. It's called a milking salve, a remis. It was invented for the dairy industry, and it's used for milking dairy cows. But it turns out now, because most of the dairy farming is done by women, especially in Africa, because of the milking, you applied to the cow's udder. But also, I think I had someone discovered that, it's also very good for my hands. Or once I do it, it's good. And what happened? People started to use it on their whole body. So it is still sold in agrovets. It is still sold. I mean, it is an agricultural kind of product, specifically for cows. But I think we all know the story. Everyone swears by how good a remis is. And at some point, I think they saw that there was an opportunity. They were selling so many of these to women. So they created now like a lotion version, which is scented and it's softer and it's pink and it had what. And then they stopped distributing the original one. So the original one, I think you'd only get it in now, a proper like agricultural farm thing. And it turns out people really rejected it and said, we are not interested. We want the original. Yes. And now even in Naivas, you'll get the remis, the original one. They just went back. But I think... I don't know what the strategy was. I'm sure there was good insight. Maybe they didn't do enough research. Maybe they didn't understand why specifically people are using the milking salve, but it seems to work. So sometimes you have to look at the product, then ask yourself, who is your audience? And I think when they made this more sophisticated one, the plan was to come and compete now with all the other famous lotion and beauty products. But that's a whole other world, which I think they had not really maybe thought through and thought about that. Because I think when you're buying a premium lotion, it's more than the lotion. Whenever I see lotion adverts, I mean, I don't know where those people are. They're just supermodel men, and I've never met them. But apparently, if I apply, I'm going to look like that, So that appeals to someone. But if I saw a remis on a billboard, I don't know if you've ever seen it, by the way, Robert.
I haven't seen it.
You need to look for it as a picture of a cow. I mean, it's not the last thing you'll think about is that it's applied. But especially for babies, it's fantastic. My baby has eczema, skin. This is not a sponsored
conversation.
But that's just an example of how product being clear on your audience, and then now you develop your your relevant messaging, whether it's a product you do, whether it's a service you do. So audiences change. You may have a premium audience. You may have an audience who is price sensitive, an audience who is looking for status, an audience who is looking for practicality. Like there are phones that sell how many selfies you can take, the lens. The other phones that talk about battery life. They are two very different people.
Right.
A battery person is not interested in storage and photos because maybe their lifestyle, they want a phone that is reliable and works. Someone else, it's about, people even joke and say majority of us use 20 to 30% of the features on our phone. And we always put our phones on the desk. It's bizarre, but you see, it's because it's a statement piece. Yeah, but the people we have what we call kabambes.
I feel very targeted. But all right.
And you have people who use products like kabambe. That's someone who just needs to make a call, make a text, but they know it can last for 3-4 days. So that's what they're interested in. So the messaging to that person surely cannot be the same for a person buying a high-end smartphone.
Definitely. All right, that's some very good insights there. And I think now, since we are still at audiences, we're in a digital age where that audience also is sort of unique and comes with its own, consequences, if I might say. And in that digital age, one business misstep can go viral. And we've seen lots of companies scramble to, try and figure out a crisis of that nature online. What's the key to navigating this digital age when there's a time of crisis, with very clear and strategic communications, such that you don't even end up making it worse?
Yeah, I think that's a big question, and I think it's it's an evolving question. I think it really depends on the type of crisis. It depends on also the kind of organization you are. So one thing I don't think all organizations have to be digital, number one. For me, I feel channels should be informed by the audience. So if your audience are not online, I don't think you should struggle too much investing on being online. It's okay to have a presence, but I think it should be commensurate to where your audience are. So in communications and at Well-Made Strategy, we believe in going to where your audience is, not necessarily asking them to come to you. It's easier. So I'll give you an example. Say you're an organization and you do a lot of work in the policy space. Maybe not necessarily business, but that's the kind of work you do, advocacy work, policy, you're trying to change systems. Most of government officials, even if they're on digital, they're not there officially. So I'm not online as a PS officially. I'm there just like everyone else, just for my own browsing and everything. But you'll find someone posting on X a very serious report, hoping the minister will see it or MPs will see it and they'll say, on Tuesday we need to table this. But in Kenya, interestingly, the government still reads newspapers. That's why newspapers still exist, even if circulation is low. But being in the paper is such a major thing, and newspapers are still distributed within government offices. So if I really wanted to get a message to a broad group of government officials, I'll still put a full page ad and say, this is what you're looking for, or this is a crisis, or maybe do a feature story, talk about how there's a big problem in a certain part of the country, or a certain part in a sector, maybe in the agriculture sector. Maybe there's, like I had something last week that right now, Rwanda is overtaking us with French beans exports, and there's a time we were in charge. But apparently, we cost, I think, 300 shillings more per kilo to export than Rwanda. You see? So if I want that story to come out, I'd rather get a journalist to put it than on X. So on X, you may trend, but you may be trending with the wrong people.
Right.
So that's the thing about thinking about audiences. So if I want to maybe get farmers, I want to get the Ministry of Agriculture interested in an issue, I'd rather go on a local TV station. I'd rather be in the newspaper. I'd rather be on radio, even if they're considered, that's old school media. But the people I want to reach, assuming most government officials at that decision-making level are over 55. Yeah. They are still consuming that. So maybe in 20, 30 years, maybe digital will be the thing. But I think the key thing is you have to keep balancing. You have to keep managing. But always ask the question, which channel are my audience using? So that's the first level. If you're a youthful brand, naturally your audience primarily are online. They are more sensitive. They are more demanding about specific issues. So for them, you have to work with them. You need to understand them. And then I always encourage as much as possible. So there's messaging in terms of what you're saying. Then there's the messenger who is talking to them.
Okay.
Yeah. So is it an older person telling young people how you're handling the situation? They may not resonate. But if I was to get younger people in my team who understand the lingo, who understand the approach, who understand how to engage them, so that you know who to talk to, because there are also times I've seen organizations fighting a crisis online, and the people you're fighting the crisis with are actually not your customers. Yeah, they actually don't use your product. So I'll give you an example of, let me just use an example of a rare product, generators. Yeah, there are like 3 or 4 companies that sell generators across the country, huge organizations.
Right.
So if the generators start failing, it may start trending. And knowing Kenyans, they will contribute and say, yeah, that's a problem. But the truth is, your real customer are the people who own buildings, probably technical suppliers. So you might find all your customers may not even be more than 100 people.
Right.
But it's one person who represents a chain of malls. It's one person who owns 3, 4, is in a real estate development company. I would rather you do one-on-one meetings with them. I'd rather you call them to a room and explain the challenge. But can you imagine having that fight online? And the reality is none of us are buying building grade generators. Okay.
I wouldn't even mention one company that's
exactly. See,
doing that.
But if you remember a case in point, JKI generators failed. People found out who the generator company supplier was. And they were trolled. Yeah. But if you started engaging, you're engaging the country. The country is angry with other issues and power issues, not you as an organization. So you should be going to sit with the Ministry of Transport and explaining what's going on. But if you start that dance, so yes, you can put out a statement to cool things down, to manage, but it's very important to be clear who you're engaging. You can't take care of everyone. You're not an organization like Safaricom where you touch everyone. Now for them, a crisis is a big deal because they affect all of us.
Online and offline.
Exactly, yeah.
Right.
So what I would say in terms of digital, of course you need there's a whole conversation around crisis communications. But remember, if you're not invested in your comms, you won't be able to handle the crisis when it comes. So a crisis to me is like first aid. It's like preparing for a fire incident. You have everything, your extinguishers, everything is in place. Then the day it happens, you activate the plan. Yeah, but you have to have the team in place and everything. And then there are various protocols. You need to assess the severity of the situation, who's been affected, if you have any liability as an organization, and then you take it from there. Because we've also seen organizations where there's a crisis internally, they post it online, nobody even knew it had happened. So
now it's a crisis.
Yeah, of course, exactly. So it really depends on the kind of work that you do. It depends on the impact of your crisis. So if, let's say, I think we've seen this with some organizations that are forced to recall a product because it has an issue. So it's always a catch-22. If we don't say and more people get hurt, we have liability because we knew. At the same time, if we announce, then now can we recover? So there's a lot of thinking and business planning to be done. Then is when you activate the communications. But like I said, even communications can't fix the crisis. It can only manage the communications around the crisis. So the crisis team your crisis management team have to have a plan. Then we agree on the key communication points and who to engage at what level. Because there are times even before you go digital, you already spoken to certain stakeholders. Because I wouldn't want to be finding out, like sometimes when you hear a bank is closing, I shouldn't find out people saying I went to the bank and I couldn't withdraw.
Yes.
Can you have sent your customers are blessed and said, hey guys, SMS. Yeah, like we always get messages telling us our ATM services are down.
Yeah.
We are updating. That's part of you're preparing.
Okay.
Because if someone went and it doesn't work, they'll claim, oh my God, I'm stuck. I couldn't go to hospital. Maybe the worst has happened. It's all your fault.
Yeah.
But if you're done your at least basics, then you can say, at least we had notified you in good time. It gives you some buffer.
Right. Having a communications team is like being prepared for a fire emergency. I think I like that analogy. So we are in, again, digital age, digital tools, artificial intelligence, the biggest buzzword of the past few years and probably going to be for the next couple. And automation. All of this are reshaping how we are communicating, whether person to person, online, or as businesses. How can organizations rather ensure that their messaging remains personal, it's human, It's not, there's lots of tools. We have chatbots from Google to OpenAI, the ChatGPTs, the Geminis. How do we make this communication also, not take away the human element, so that when I'm reading a communication from an organization, I'd be like, this is something I can generate myself. And the other problem that I actually thought of before we got to this conversation was, in that automation and AI era, there's also a risk in that now we are going to see a likelihood of downsizing of a communication team, where, the CEO could decide and say, whatever it is you are communicating on my behalf, I can do it on my phone. I can automate every response and just post it out there. What can we do, or what can organizations do to ensure that they're still remaining as personal as possible?
Yeah, I think that's a tricky question. Yeah. I think on the downsizing part, I think that's going to happen anyway. I mean, I've seen ChatGPT write things, and I'm like, oh my God, I have nothing to add. It's a perfect response. I think the tools are great, and for me, how I see the first thing it will do is save a lot of time. So communications, there's the artistic side of communications, coming up with the actual strategy, thinking through the messaging, the campaign names. I think that will reduce that period a lot. And then after that, what it's going to do, it hopefully should free up more time for other things. So yes, naturally, there might be fewer people required, but I think what it will do, it will also allow more people to jump into the foray. So on one hand, there might be downsizing, but you may also have a lot of multitasking, because I think there are people who are creative, but may not necessarily be in the communication space. Now, the tools will help bring out your idea. So even if I may not know exactly how to use the jargon and the technical terms, I can be able to put in prompts, and it probably brings. So what I think we'll see is even more interesting communication, more interesting ideas. In terms of humanizing, I think that's a technology issue. Machine learning will fix that. I think it'll get it right. In fact, I'd say broadly, it's already getting it right. Where I think maybe a little bit, and maybe let me speak in the context of Africa, it'll take a while for machines to catch up with us. We change our language every month. We have our Sheng, Zulus have their own, Tanzanians, Watu wa Bongo, Ugandans have their own. So I think that's what's going to be the difference, especially for Africa. I think in the West, their language is a bit more static. So it's easier for machines to pick up quickly. But Africa, you need to be in touch with the cultural aspects. You need to be in touch with the lingo. You need to be in touch. In touch. You need to be in touch with what's the mood. Yeah, like now we know the mood in East Africa. We know the mood in different parts of the continent, which keeps shifting. And for us, we are still impacted heavily by the politics of the day, how the economy is performing. So I think maybe when we now start getting an Afro GPT, maybe then we'll start seeing like real
sounds like something really
that's
amazing.
On the way.
Yeah.
But I think the big difference, maybe what will help you distinguish, is the ability for you to interact, engagement. Because the problem also is a lot of bots. Like I use a few, especially nowadays, most customer care have bots. So you say, what's your problem? I say, my thing is not connecting. It says, sorry to hear that. What can we do? I said, then it tells me, is the cable plugged in? Is it on? And I'm like, really? And I'll say yes to all. And they'll say, okay, call our customer care. Many times you don't get resolution. Whereas if I'm chatting to a real person, I can explain to them and say, look, I already did this. And I believe when a customer care agent is talking to a customer, you can tell how knowledgeable a customer is about the product or the issue. So I think these are just tools like any other. Yeah. So a tool is only as good as the person handling the tool. So you'll still need comms people, and yes, maybe not as many, but you'll definitely need even more skilled comms people to use the tool properly. Otherwise, I think we can all tell when we are talking to a bot. Yeah. So, but I still believe that's, I think, a programming issue. Maybe in 2 years, 3 years, who knows? We may not even know the difference. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see. But what I don't know is how good the machines will be at understanding human nature. and what's hot.
The nuances, as you said,
those
in
nuances.
Africa.
I think that's maybe so. At least I think I have a career at least for another 10 years at least.
Fuchs for me too.
Yeah. Then after that, I don't know.
Let's run the 10 years first.
Yeah.
Okay. We could speak a lot. Mastering the art of communication, I feel, is very broad.
Yes.
There are so many questions we could go into, many examples that we could offer. But I think for the time that we have been allowed on KOFISI Connect podcast, I'll just go to my last question. And I'm hoping that we are doing well in terms of our communication so far. From your assessment, I hope we've mastered the art for this interview. So for businesses then into the future, what skills or tools, resources they should invest in to stay ahead of business communication into those 10 years when we'll still be having our jobs?
Yeah, and even if the time is short, I think this is a preamble to our in-person session, so I think we'll be able to go a bit deeper. I think the main thing I'll say for organizations as a parting shot is don't assume communications is just, you can do a few workshops, a few sessions, and then we all start communicating. You just have to invest. I can't see any way around it. Just the same way, I think I said you don't train people casually about auditing. You don't take people for a 2-day workshop on security, then say fire the security company. We can take it from here. So the same way we've recognized that all these are independent sectors with specific skilling, specific know-how. That's at the minimum. Just invest. Even if you have one person dedicated to comms, someone good, they will be able to demonstrate any gaps you have internally and advise you on how to scale up after that. So I think that's at the very least. The same when you open an organization, you only say we need a legal person, we need someone in finance, maybe logistics, operations, something. Comms should rank the same. Yeah, and start it from, always plan with it from day one. Even if you're a startup, you'll still need comms if you want to do fundraising, if you want to explain what your project is about, you want to talk about your impact, you want to do VC funding, you still need to pitch a story. So you still need comms. It doesn't matter the stage you are at of the organization or the product cycle. Okay. Just take it as seriously as that.
All right. Thank you very much, Julian Macharia, Managing Partner at Well-Made Strategy. Make sure that you catch the masterclass happening at KOFISI, 6th February 2025. My name is Richard Okenye. Keep it here on KOFISI Connect podcast.